Okay, YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Another quick game of interplanetary ice by Go on here, back to Mars, back to Gale Crater, and we're looking at this image from Sol 1590. This was taken back in January of this year, 2017. Here's the date at the bottom here, Sol 1590, there's the date, okay, proper Mars image, so we're told. And we have this ridgeline at the back, which is interesting. There's another ridgeline further back from that, but you can't really see much detail. And this is Mount Sharp up here, which is very out of focus and a fair way off, actually. Probably about 2 kilometers away at this stage. And the area we're focusing on today especially is on this pile of rocks here, this kind of ridge going up the side. And there's this rather interesting thing here. Now, when I first saw this, I thought, oh yeah, it's just another weirdly shaped rock, but actually, I'm not so sure. Now, before we do anything else, I'm just going to show you this image in photo forensics, which I've got up here. Here's the image, and the area we're looking at is here, but there is a lot of missing information here, and the image has been downgraded a fair amount. In fact, it tells you here, it says JPEG was last saved at 70% quality, JPEG standard. Quality determined from the quantization tables that encoded the JPEG. Okay. So that's pretty accurate, but of course this image may have been processed more than once. Now, when these images are first taken, they have a black border around them, and in fact if you go back to the very early sols, a lot of them still have the black border on them, and they're bigger. So what they started doing around about sol 40 or 50, they started cropping the border off, making the images a bit smaller. But when they do that, they then save it as a JPEG, and the JPEG compresses the image by 30%. Now, if for any reason there's anything in the image that they don't like, for instance, like maybe a skull or a building or a piece of equipment or something that shouldn't really be on the surface of Mars, as we're told, then they may well obfuscate it and then crop or cut some of the image out and then put some fake sand over it. Now, if they were to do that and then save the image again as a JPEG, then it would lose another 30% of the information. So it's possible that some of these images actually have been processed more than once and are actually missing 60% of their information, as I've said in the past. I'm not saying all of them have, I think some of them have. And this may be a case of it, I don't know. But let's have a look anyway. I've got it up in a folder here. I've got some comparisons also to have a look at. I've got it on the Gigapan as well. We got the Gigapan somewhere here, and this is pretty nice. It's done by Neville Thompson, done a nice job here, but he's working with quite poor images. Not his fault, of course, but he's made a good job here, and he's color corrected it, so it's gone bluer, which is much nicer to look at, and it's probably nearer the real color of the actual surface of Mars, because we know from the other rovers that many of the rocks on Mars are actually this blue color. They're not all brown, and the sand isn't all kind of orangey red or whatever colour it's supposed to be. A lot of it's actually blue. It's volcanic sand, a lot of it. So there we have it. And there's a couple of things here. There was this thing here. Let's have a quick look at this first. This I don't think is anything significant, but I thought it was interesting just because the shape of it's so nicely curved. It kind of looks like part of something that's broken off here. I don't know what it is. I have absolutely no idea what it is, but it looks kind of like it's intelligent. I'll show you a little clip of that in a minute. And then I was looking at that and I thought, well, that's cool. I actually spotted this over a year ago, I think, or not a year ago, but when the image came out, almost a year ago. And I was looking at this thing over here, and I actually think this is some kind of skull, just here. It may be blue, don't be fooled by the colour. A lot of the skulls and specimens I found are blue in colour. Why wouldn't they be? I think this is some kind of mammal skull, a bit like an elephant. And when I show you the enhancements, which I'm going to do now, you may agree, you may not, you may disagree. Absolutely fine. That's cool by me. I'm not saying I can't possibly prove this is a skull, but what I do have is lots of experience working with zoologists and people like that, and I do have quite a collection of skulls, various animals, and I have actually seen an elephant skull up close. A guy I used to work for called Dr. Ian Redmond, you can look him up. He's a world-renowned zoologist, and I worked for him for about a year, 6 months or a year I think it was, and I did surveys about zoos with him, with Zoo Check and stuff like that, and I used to go around measuring all these enclosures and stuff to make sure, or just to see how big they were or small they were. And since then, of course, many of them have been enlarged due to our work. And he's done lots of work in Africa for the mountain gorillas and that kind of thing. But I digress. Here's the image, completely raw clip, nothing done to it apart from being enlarged. 2 eye sockets here, and what look like little tusks here. It's pretty blurry, I know, but if you colour correct it, like I've done here, and add some contrast, like I've done, it starts to pop out. Add a bit of a colour filter there, that doesn't actually help, and that's worse. A bit more contrast there. And there we have it. What can I say? Is it? I don't know. Now, another thing we also have to bear in mind with Mars is that most of these things are way smaller than they are on Earth. I.e., the humanoid-looking skulls that I've seen are sort of half or third size of human skulls. Most are around third to half. And many of the animal skulls I've found are also much, much smaller. They're miniature, in fact. Like the chimpanzee-looking skulls and stuff like that I found, they're really quite small. And I don't think they're all baby creatures or adolescent creatures. I actually think they're actually that size. These are adult, possibly adult skulls, which are just very small because they're on Mars. Now, that would kind of make sense due to the fact that Mars is a lot smaller. I don't know if there's any correlation there. There would have been perhaps more pressure on food resources, so animals wouldn't maybe have got so big. There may have been short of supply of vegetation, I don't know. Maybe only dwarf varieties of certain types of animals survived. If there was a cataclysm, there could have been many cataclysms, and only the very small creatures survived, and maybe this is the remains of one of these small mammals. Now, it may not be an elephant. It may be some kind of marine creature we're looking at here. The skull of a marine creature. I don't know. It looks kind of reptilian. It's got sort of pointed, sort of almost reptilian-like eyes, but then it's shaped kind of like an elephant skull. Let me show you a comparison to that, just to show that I'm not completely making this up. And of course, this image here has been compiled from the so-called raw JPEGs, which are actually quite badly damaged. And when you zoom in, you can actually see the damage in the image on this one. You can see this kind of grid-like distortion over it. Now that actually destroys a lot of the image information. So what I use is the BR2 versions of the image if I cannot get anything better, and that's what I've done here. Let me go out to the folder a second. Yeah, I mean here's that weird thing. Very odd indeed, and it's got some nice symmetry to it here. Really nice. I don't know what it is. Please give some comments below. I really don't know what to call this one. Absolutely no idea, but it's got kind of a weird sort of shoe, kind of wedge shape with the... I don't know. It may have been attached to one of the other rocks in the area. There is another sort of large rock over here, and another one here. It could have been part of something that's broken. Lots of smashed up debris in the area. So an interesting image, but not great quality. And when you zoom in, like I've got here, let's zoom in properly. It looks fine until you get about halfway, and then when you get right in, it just kind of breaks up. Now this is the normal JPEG, and when you zoom in, you can see there's something interesting there, but it really is very choppy, and the image information has largely been destroyed. But if you use the BR2 version of the image, which is this one, it's slightly smaller in size, but it has more kilobytes in it. In other words, there's more of the information is in there, even though it's been downsized a little bit. Okay, so it's actually better quality, and in fact, this is apparently 95% of its original, which I still dispute, but it's better than the one we just looked at. So you've got slightly more clarity here, and you can sort of see those eye socket kind of things here, and the little sort of shapes in there a bit better, but still very grungy. And this thing is small. I mean, I don't know how big it is. It's probably only about 5 inches across. I'd imagine no more than 8 at the most from here to here. So it's not large, and it's very hard to say exactly because we don't know how far the camera is zoomed in, and it often will stand back on a ridge and then zoom right across, and often zoom right into the background as well. But you can't see any real detail up here because this stuff's quite a long way off. This kind of dips down into this little valley here, and we've got these butts along here. I think a lot of these butts are actually buried buildings. They're all in kind of straight lines. They're everywhere. Everywhere that the rover goes in Gale Crater, there's these long, straight ridges, okay? Some of them look like ramps, some of them look like buildings, some of them look like just ruined walls and structures that are largely buried. They're all over the place. I mean, let's have a look at the image in the Gigapan again, actually, because it does, even though when you zoom in it breaks up, it gives you a better idea of the actual overall scale of things. And you can see that ridgeline a lot clearer because he's colour corrected it here and added contrast to it. So you can see a lot more going on. It's all down to NASA and the way they compress the images, I'm afraid. They do ruin a lot of information. And sometimes we get a nice big object up close. This thing only looks clear because it's really close, near the bottom of the image. Even then, you zoom in and it's all choppy and broken up. So that's what happens when idiots, like some of the people at JPL, not all of them, some of them, are over compressing these images and saving them in a bad JPEG format when they should be using PNG or PNG files instead, or something like that, or a high quality lossless JPEG. Right, so yeah, I mean, I've been going on about this for years, but it really does annoy me because they are literally destroying a lot of information here, and often we don't even get PDFs of these, or if we do, we get them 6 months later, and they're not easy to find. But let's have a look at that skull again. Possible skull. And we have it very muddy. I've tried my best to clear up the image. I've blurred it a bit, but of course it's lost definition. So the only way to get that definition back is to add loads of contrast carefully. Just keep adding contrast and brightness. And there we have it. These look like little tusks coming out here. Not a lot of detail there, but it does look a bit like one of these. It's not the same. The scale is completely different. It's not the same shape. But look at the nasal part here, nasal cavity here, and the eye sockets. You know, it does have similarities. It's not the same, of course. I'm not saying it's the same, but there are similarities there, for sure. Actually, let's have a look at some other elephant images here. There's a whole bunch of them here. Let's get rid of that one. There's an elephant man there. Poor bugger. But yeah, I mean, there's different types of elephants, of course, and you know, they are all fairly similar looking in sort of shape. But yeah, I mean, it's not the same as any of these. I'm not saying it is an elephant. I'm just saying it looks like some kind of mammal similar to an elephant. It may even have been some kind of seal or kind of marine mammal with tusks. Not only land animals have tusks, or robust vegetarian-looking skulls like that with massive teeth. Yeah, and it may well just be a rock, but if you take into consideration the fact that there are many, many other animal skulls that I found. Some of these are fossilized, some of them are just skulls lying around. Some of them even still have what looks like flesh on them. And why would there be so many decapitated animal skulls and heads lying around? I hear you ask. Well, when animals are predated upon by predators and scavengers, things like rats or dogs or whatever, often the head becomes separated from the body and the body parts are dragged away and eaten, and bones scattered over quite wide areas. Also, if there is a cataclysm on Mars, like there was on Earth 15 or 12,000 years ago, whenever it was, a lot of animals were frozen, blast frozen. Woolly mammoths, for instance, in Siberia have been found that are still perfectly preserved, and they're sort of 20, 30,000, well, whatever thousand years old they are. Some of them are around 15,000 or something. They're perfectly preserved and still edible. They were blast frozen and then covered in snow, and then the snow compacted, of course, and formed ice. And these are perfectly preserved, and they can still look at the contents of their stomach and everything. They were blast frozen. Now, if you were standing in the middle of a desert or near a lake or something, and suddenly there was a cataclysm, and a large part of the atmosphere was destroyed, say by a big explosion of some sort, like a nuclear war or a huge asteroid or meteor or strike or something, then the temperature would drop dramatically and extremely quickly within minutes of that, or at least within hours. And if you were walking around, you would freeze, and the wind would come along and freeze you solid. And if say there was a secondary explosion, of course, then what would happen then? Maybe you would shatter. Maybe your head would actually get blown off, and your body would break up into little pieces. Similar theories have been put forward when the dinosaurs were largely wiped out, and you often find dinosaur parts kind of the skulls are nowhere near the rest of the body, and this may be true. I don't know, but it is a theory. But there are lots of them. There's a giant snake head here, which is kind of just broken off, and you can see bits of flesh hanging off it. There's some weird-looking camel-type creature there, which looks like some kind of vegetarian animal. Some of these are very clear. Some of them are tiny. There's this little tiny thing here. Tiny alien animal head, yeah, whatever that is. It may not be, of course. And some of these just may be rocks that look like things. There's a pig, what looks like a pig or boar's head. Another weird-looking aquatic mammal here. There's aquatic fossils here of very ancient-looking creatures like crustaceans and such like. And there's all sorts. Some of them look like dinosaurs almost. Some of them look like apes or gorillas or chimpanzees. There's a thing that looks like a crocodile, which may be a rock, but who knows. But there we have it. Is it an elephant? Probably not. Is it something similar? Could it be some kind of marine mammal? Possibly. I think it is possible, judging by all the other skulls that I've found, and some of them are humanoid, some of them are apes and primates, and they all look like mammals, most of them. There haven't been many skulls of reptiles found so far. Perhaps they're extremely tiny, and we just haven't got that lucky yet. But it's nothing like the size of any of these. These are way, way bigger, and it does have a similar shape. There are some similarities. So there we go. And of course, if you want to get photo forensics, you can just type it in and it'll come up on Google. But you can get it from my Android app here, or my ArtAlienTV app. You can use it on an iPhone as well. If you press this, you go to the app, you go to here, and you'll find photo forensics just here, just below the Spirit Rover raw images. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty basic, but it does give you some good basic information, and it will help, in your mind at least, work out why these images are so ropey on the whole, And I actually do think a lot of them are processed more than once, which is why they look a lot worse than a 30% reduction in information. I think they're much worse than that. I think they're more like 60, a lot of them. But of course, if you don't zoom in at all, they look fine. As soon as you get in close, they turn to absolute crap. And it really puts me off doing anything with a lot of these images sometimes, because the image quality is so poor that I really think to myself, what is the point in even doing a video if the image is that poor? Perhaps that's why they do it. Perhaps they know full well that people are going to zoom in close and perhaps claim that they found something here or there, like an animal or something. And a lot of people do that, of course, but the problem is also you do get a lot of people out there who are claiming this is an animal or a bear or something or some kind of crazy creature, and a lot of these videos are fake or grossly exaggerated. Now, I don't do this gross exaggeration. If something really looks like something, I will publish it. If it only looks a bit like something, I will not even publish it. I have hundreds and hundreds of similar finds to this. This was borderline because of the quality of the image. I have hundreds more like this, which are borderline, much worse in fact, a lot of them. And I just haven't published them because basically it's counterproductive. If you're going to publish anything that looks like animals on Mars, they've got to actually look like the thing you're saying they are, and at least have the right shape and sort of relatively similar looking proportions and morphology. So there we have it. So is it an elephant? Probably not. Is it some kind of creature like an elephant, or a small creature, or some kind of marine mammal? Could well be. This was a lake, of course, so it could have been some kind of marine creature. So answers on the postcard, guys, if you've got any ideas. Some of you are very good at this kind of guessing game, which it is, and often put up links to images that are similar, so I look forward to that. And this is just the Curiosity map where it is now. The image we just looked at was back here before it crossed this area. It was around here, and now we're up here. So we're actually right at the base of Mount Sharp almost here, pretty much. You've got a bit of a way to go yet, but we're getting there. It's going very slowly, but surely. And recently there have been very few finds in this area, along this ridge. And I'm hoping when we come down the other side here, into this lower part, well, we should see a lot more stuff, because obviously if there was a tsunami and a cataclysm, many of the artifacts would have been washed into the lower areas, okay? So that's where you tend to find more anomalies. When we're on the higher ground, we don't tend to find so much, okay? So thanks for watching, everybody. Sorry if that was a little bit long. I may edit that down a little bit more for you. Answers on the postcard as usual. Is it a skull? Don't know. Yes, it certainly looks like one, but is it? It may not be, of course. So I'll put a few more clips of these in at the end for you. Please share it on social media. Please give the thumbs up. It really helps. And feel free to leave your comments and witticisms below, as usual. And I shall see you soon.